Good afternoon and welcome to our webinar today. My name is Waldo Smith and I am the Director of Microlending and one of the business counselors for the Wyoming Women's Business Center. Our webinar topic today is From Shoeboxes to Computers, Bookkeeping Practices for Your Business. This is the first in a series of 6 webinars we will be providing over the course of the next 5 months, dealing with bookkeeping practices and specifically how to use QuickBooks in your business. This webinar is being recorded and will be available for viewing on our YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and type in Wyoming Women's Business Center. And you can see a list of the existing webinars that are already there. Our presenter today is Kim Vincent. Kim is a local business owner, co-founder and COO of Local Crowd LLC, which is a business designed to help with local crowdfunding campaigns. Kim has a BS and an MBA in accounting. She is a QuickBooks Pro certified trainer and has 20 years of experience using QuickBooks. She has worked as a business counselor for the Wyoming Women's Business Center and still does counseling as a contractor for our organization. Through this series of webinars, Kim is offering individual counseling in QuickBooks to those who need assistance with this topic. Her contact information will be provided at the end of the presentation, or you can contact our office to take advantage of this one-on-one service. During the course of the presentation, if you have any questions, please type them in the question box and we will forward them on to or ask them to Kim and she can respond to those. With that, welcome again, and Kim, we will turn it over to you.
Well, thank you very much for that wonderful introduction, Waldo, especially to the program, because I think it's really awesome service that you guys are doing in terms of not only providing the information, but also providing the one-on-one counseling. And it's not just me that would necessarily provide the services. It depends on what your needs would be. There's opportunities to either talk to Waldo or talk to Debbie and really get to know the staff there, because they're a really great group of people to work with. So let's just do a couple housekeeping things. I take it you can see my screen okay? You can see the title slide?
Yes, we can.
I'm going to assume you can. Okay, very good. Sorry. So I want to welcome everybody and thank you for taking the time to be on the call today. I know we're all really busy and we're asking you to attend another training, and you're probably challenged by the notion that, God, I don't know that I have time to do this, and I have all these other things I need to do for my business. How do I make all this work? And today I think we're just gonna try to dial in on your financial activities. So when I named this From Shoeboxes to Computers, I want you to think about having some type of container and the shoebox is going to be the most visual one, where you're putting a lot of information into some type of container. And when we think about the basic bookkeeping part of it, that's really recording all of those transactions. And when you think about then, now I need to do something with all that information, because once you put that piece of paper in the shoebox, I don't want you to take it out multiple times or have to refer to it. I want you to have a system in place for a way to record it one time and have the ability to go back to it if you need to, but don't make it a practice of going back to it all the time. And so today we're going to talk about some of those bookkeeping practices for your business, some of those simple things for processing all of that incoming stuff, and as well as analyzing it. So we're going to talk a little bit about the Wyoming Women's Business Center, who they are and what they do, just a brief overview of that. We'll focus a little bit on why we're doing this program, what's the point of this information. We'll talk about financial management and why it's so important for your business, and you'll see some statistics about business success and failure rates, and so much of it has to do with people understanding what's going on with the finances of their business. We'll talk about accounting tools and some considerations for you, because I really do want to ease some of those pain points for you, and I share those pain points with you. So I'm doing a lot of financial and accounting for several businesses. I'm doing it all in QuickBooks, but I'm not saying that you have to do it in QuickBooks. I'm going to show you some other tools that you can use. But at the end of the day, I want you to be able to answer the question, are you profitable? And if you are generating profit, can you identify how much time and effort you're putting into that process and what you're receiving in compensation as an owner of the business? And then if there's some questions that you have for me, I'd be happy to entertain those as long as you keep them really simple. So a little bit about my background. I started out, I've done a few pivots in my career, and I really started out as a geologist. I came to Wyoming because I loved Wyoming, and when I got here I realized I could participate in the local economy in a different way. And so I went back to school, and I worked on an MBA, and I learned a lot of business strategies, and I focused on the accounting part of it. And I had actually taken an accounting class in college, and my roommate was an accounting major and went to work for one of the big accounting firms at the time, and I really did not like accounting at all. And so once I got into the business side of things, though, and I worked for a small manufacturer that was it was related to the geology and environmental industry, I really started seeing the value of, oh, this makes sense. I mean, in terms of why you need to spend the time learning the financial side of your business, because it's going to tell a story for you. And you want to be able to repeat that story to some of your stakeholders, whether it's your banker or your spouse or your kids or whoever's involved in your business. You want to be able to share that story in a very knowledgeable way. So the Women's Business Center has a lot of services that can help you do that in terms of business planning. They can provide some counseling. There's great networking opportunities. There's a roundtable that's held in Laramie. There's some roundtables in other parts of the state. And most importantly, they have some tools to help you access capital. And this is such an issue for so many small businesses. A $3,000 here, $5,000 there could make such a difference in terms of what you're doing in your business, and buying another machine or getting a new computer to make you more efficient. You need to talk to the folks at the Women's Business Center, because they can share some of those tools that they have. They have an IDA program, which is a savings match program. You save $2,000, they can match up to $2,000. They have some microloans, all really great tools. And like all organizations, they're looking for funding. And I just want to share this one thing with you that's going on right now at the Women's Business Center. I noted that our clients and their success is always in our hearts, but it's program funding that's usually on our mind. Right now is a really stressful time in terms of preparing grants and trying to find funding for the organization. But one project that they decided to look for crowdsourcing was renovating a creative space for artists in the Civic Center. And Debbie Gorski, the director at the center, posted a campaign, and she's just done an amazing job of going out and asking for really small amounts of money from a lot of people. And this is a way to find supporters in your community that like what you're doing. It's a way for them to maybe shop for other products that they would normally buy in the marketplace. She's got a lot of beautiful rewards that she's offering with this campaign. So you donate $25, and there's some items that you can select. She has some pop-up paint parties. So you're not alone when you're thinking about, how am I going to find that next pool of cash, and this is just another tool that's available to folks in our community to use. So I just want to thank Debbie for being a brave pioneer and getting out there and trying this technology, because it can make a big difference for an organization like a nonprofit. So what are we trying to do today? Well, You know, when we think about accounting practices, and I really want to emphasize the word practice, because, you know, you need to be getting into this routine of doing it regularly and knowing what steps you're supposed to be doing. So you're going to identify a process, and, you know, some of the general principles are applicable to everyone on the call, but you might change it up a little bit if you're retail, or if if you need point of sale type monitoring, or if you're a service provider. But you really, all of you need some type of accounting system, some type of program to keep your financial story current. And you know, the important piece of that is being current. You want to know, and maybe you're doing it monthly, but you want to know what's going on, what your cash flow is, and are you making money at any point in time. So the question is, well, okay, I have my shoebox and I'm throwing all these receipts in there. Can I just go in and tally the receipts and do it with a simple transaction list? And you could. I mean, there are some really simple tools that you could do to go in and track all your incoming and outgoing expenditures. You could do it in Excel, and I'll show you a couple examples of that. Or is my business at a point where I really need to transform the way that I'm accounting for these financial activities in my business? You know, am I the bookkeeper and the accountant, and I'm trying to do the controlling? Because they're all very different functions. From the person that's entering those transactions, at some point you might want to delegate that to an outside bookkeeper, or you hire someone in your organization. But then we have to go in and do the analysis piece, and that's going to be the accounting piece. And at some point we'll probably have to go in and try to learn the controlling piece, which is where you're, you know, doing the reporting and understanding what those financial statements are saying, and being able to share those with your banker or whoever your stakeholders are. So we really want to think about what are the best practices that you can put into place for your business. We got to track, we got to report, and we got to do it all accurately, and we got to do it in a really time-friendly manner. So, this isn't the message of gloom and doom, but just understand that, you know, there's a lot of longitudinal studies showing what's going on with small business, and you'll see survival rates over the first 5 years, and it's varied by industry. And what they show is that there's a lot of similar mistakes that are made by business owners that have to do with the financial realm, your road to success or your road to failure. And it's really about understanding your financial position. You don't want to put everything into the shoebox and at the end of the year hand it to your accountant and say, here, let me know how I did. You want to be in there, you know, boots on ground. You're understanding your costs, your cost structure. You're understanding how you're pricing your products and why you're pricing them at the price points that you've selected. You know what your cash flow is, and you have the ability to manage your growth. And you know, they talk a little bit about poor banking relationships, but I think most folks are have an open line of communication with their banker, especially if you do have a little bit of debt structure. You may have used some credit card debt to get to a certain point. You may have a home equity loan. You may have a lot of where owner contributions have come in and you've invested a lot in your own business. But these are all things that you can really gain some control over with an understanding of your financial statements. When we think about accounting methodologies, most of us on the call are probably doing it on a cash basis. If we have any type of inventory, we may be doing a little bit of a hybrid where everything's cash and we have some inventory that we're putting as an asset and we're not expensing out until after we sell it. Each method has merits and disadvantages, and there are some rules regarding the size of your organization, the amount of sales that you have, and whether you have to use accrual. But for most of us, it's going to be cash basis, and it's really about relating the timing of your revenues and expenses. So let's say like for the Women's Business Center, we work on some grant cycles, and at the end of the period we've incurred a lot of, personnel costs supporting that grant without having been reimbursed for that grant. Then we're going to issue an invoice, and that's going to be kind of accrual basis. If everything else you're doing is sales, you're doing sales receipt, then that's going to be a cash basis transaction. So we just have to know which world we're operating in. So I think a real critical objective for every person on the call is, okay, we need to be recognizing our income and expenses in real time. And if there's anything that we're doing worth doing in the business, then you got to be measuring it. And I'm not trying to say here's another thing you have to do. You have to do it as part of the things that you're already doing. And I think you start out by having a really keen understanding of what your critical metrics are for your business. And that critical metric could be, I need to do so much in sales in a year. I know what my cost margin is going to be. I need to have a really good handle on my markup. Every time I sell a product, if I'm a retailer, I know that 50 cents of that dollar that I take in goes towards that inventory piece, and I have a 50% cost margin. I know that I know what my profitability percentage is. At the end of the day, I have $100,000 in sales, and I think I might have a 10% margin on the very bottom for my net income. I know how many customers I need to get in the door each day. I know the average sale per customer. I know how much the owner can afford to be compensated. All of these are metrics that you set up and you set some goals for, and then as each month rolls along, you're coming back to your financial information and you're looking at reports that can give you that feedback that you need. Are my average sales per customer not high enough? Did I anticipate $40 per customer and I'm only selling $25? I mean, that could be a huge hit if you're spending a lot of money trying to get people in the door and you're not upselling to them. So just something for you to keep in mind in terms of your planning process. Maybe lay out some benchmarks for yourself. So how do we recognize the income and expenses in real time? Well, there's a full continuum of options. We can be really old school, and I still work with clients that do this in terms of a big 12-column sheet of paper, and they keep a log. I'll show you what that looks like visually here. We could do spreadsheets. We could do it on a computer. We could have some really simple functions going in where it's summarizing by month, by expense category, and then we can get a little more sophisticated in terms of the accounting software. And for the most part, these are going to require some type of investment. There's some mobile apps, and some of these are free. There's some online cloud-based software, and then there's software that can live on your computer. And so I have been using QuickBooks for over 20 years, so I like QuickBooks, but there are other products out there that will do equally well in terms of helping you through this process. So let's think about the first thing we do. All of us should have a business checking account or a business savings account, and we want to be running as many of our transactions through this one account, whether it's a debit transaction or it's going to be writing a check. It's possible that we have electronic fund transfers coming out on a regular basis. I set up all my utilities that way so that they're automatically paid. But however you do it, I want you to be reconciling weekly. I think that's really important. Don't wait till the end of the month when you get your bank statement. You're going in there once a week. I don't care if it's Friday or Monday, just pick a day and spend an hour with your checkbook and just see where you are and what your cash balance is. Another thing that I like to do, that I encourage retail people to do, is you set up a virtual cash drawer. And I set up like a drawer in QuickBooks. It's called cash drawer or cash register. So, you know, as a business owner, you probably are spending some of your own cash. Or you're using a personal credit card to to pay for things, and you need to recognize those expenses. So when I have a cash drawer, what happens is, let's say I take in $500 in sales, and I record all of that, and you know, it's revenues, it's going to be sales tax payable, it's all the cash that comes into my store. Some of it goes into the bank, but some of it stays in the drawer. And so I want to be able to record deposits into my checking account from there, and I may be spending cash. I may be going out as an owner and, you know, $5 and I go buy some supplies. I've got to recognize that expense. And what I like to do with the cash drawer is use that as a way to pay out the expense and then make a deposit into the cash drawer and classify the deposit as an owner contribution. So I'm always keeping track. If I'm making credit card transactions on my personal card, I need to be recording those and paying those from the business. So please track your owner contributions. It's so important because sometimes it's going to be a big component of what you're spending, and you need to recognize that expense. So we're going to review our checking account. We're going to review our balances and reconciling balances like on a weekly basis. But then we're going to be generating our financials monthly. And you're going to go in and you can, whatever system we're going to talk about the different ways to do that, but I want you to think about doing that because I want you to be able to look at October, look at September. How did I do total sales? What did I expect? What was my goal for the month? And then I want to be comparing to last year too. If I'm a new business, of course I don't have that. I'm only going to have what my goal was. But if I'm an existing business, I'm going to have some previous time periods to be looking at. I could be looking at the previous month. I could be watching the trend over the course of that year. I could be looking at September of 2016 versus September of 2015. I could look at this quarter ending September versus the quarter ending. I always want to be, you know, looking at the trends, seeing how I'm doing, because you know, the practice is going to be to make adjustments as I need to. Am I overstaffing? Am I understaffing? You know, what has to happen if I want to get sales up? Do I need to invest a little bit more effort in marketing to get more people in the door? I mean, that's the key. If you know what's going on, then your little cycle is going to be, you know, the data's going in, you're analyzing the data, you're understanding the data, you're trying to figure out what needs to be tweaked if you want to change that outcome in some way. So we're always thinking about how to fine-tune that. So when we think about what kind of tools can I use, we need to be thinking about how many transactions do I have? What are the types of transactions that I have? Because you do have a full continuum of options, and each option is going to have different benefits. It's going to have different costs associated with it. So if I have, like, typical transactions, if I have, you know, some credit card charges, I have a lot of deposits that are clearing, let me go back, if I have debit card transactions, so money's coming out of my account, I have a lot of deposits coming in on a daily basis, I'm writing checks for inventory. You know, you want to have a system that could really support that, and you're probably not going to want to do that with a sheet of green bar. You could do it with an Excel thing, but I think you want a program where you can really put that transaction in as a credit card transaction, as a debit card deposit, as a check being written, as cash out. When you know, have that many types of transactions, you want a little bit more sophisticated system for monitoring those transactions. And what are the numbers that I have? Do I have, you know, am I going to the bank twice a month with deposits? So I'm a little consulting business, and I'm just, you know, I get checks from my clients. I'm going to go in and make deposits. I'm writing very few checks because this is mostly going to be income to me. I could probably do that in a spreadsheet or on a green bar. So think about the numbers, the types, what kind of reports do I need to generate? You know, is the bank going to require that I give them a P&L every month or every quarter? Am I going to be doing payroll? Because if I am going to be doing payroll, I want to do it right, and I want to be, you know, accruing my payroll liabilities correctly, expensing those correctly, and paying those correctly. That's going to be a really important feature when we think about our accounting tools. Do I want to create customer invoices? There are some really powerful online programs that you could use that just really focus on a service provider that needs to send invoices and collect payments. Real simple books where we don't have to worry about payroll and we're not trying to do a lot of transactions. And do I have incoming bills and payables? All of these things really go into selecting what you want to use. So when I talk about a green bar, this is like an old 12-column sheet of paper that accountants used to use, because going down, like I could have this, like for the month of September, on September 1st, I did this activity and I expense it out into a certain column. So each column represents category. The first one could be my income, and the other ones could be utilities, rent, supplies, whatever I'm, you know, subcontractor. I'm going to always put that type of expense into that particular column. At the end of the month, all I'm doing is totaling each column, and I know what my expenses were for the month, and I know what my income was. Really simple way. If you have a lot of transactions, this gets pretty tedious, and then you could, hold on just a sec. Oh, I can't move this because it's in, so this one right here is, I'm going to show you these two. I'll go back to the, so like the top one, I've set up some spreadsheets where you're going in and totaling it. And this is the same way that the principle of the green bar with all the columns. You're putting in your total income that you received, and then you have all these different expense categories going across. You can keep it really simple in terms of the number of categories. What you want to do is just make it as relatable to your Schedule C if you're a sole proprietor. Make it as relatable to the tax form that you're doing so that you don't have to do a lot of tweaking at the end. So you're going to identify categories that are pretty accepted by the IRS. And then we're going to total this, total expenses. And then we're going to have another spreadsheet that kind of totals our totals. And we see 2015 versus 2014, you know, so that you can do this in a spreadsheet. And it can be very simple. At the end of the year, you know, you plug it into your Scheduled C or you turn it over to your accountant, but it's all summarized. And I've only touched that piece of paper one time. So when I've gone in and I've looked at that travel lodging in January for $120, I've recorded that expense at the time, you know, and I put that piece of paper away. But I'd always be, if I needed to, I'd always be able to come back to it. Or this $120 could represent the total of 3 or 4 transactions that have gone into, of course, lodging. It would probably be 1 transaction and not 3 or 4 that have gone into that shoebox. So you'll always be able to go back if you need to. But this is a valid tool using spreadsheets if you have limited transactions. So when we start getting into, you know, more, there's some really cost-effective tools out there. So one of them is Quicken. And Quicken is set up as more of a personal financial manager, but it works. It's just not very sophisticated with regards to some of the transactions you could do for asset acquisition or payroll. It just is really good at, here's my checking account, or here's my cash drawer. It's really good at keeping tracks of the transactions, categorizing the transactions by a pretty standard chart of accounts, and then preparing a report at the end of the year. And you can get Quicken online for under, you know, under $50. Probably sometimes it comes free with new computers. So and you know, when we talk about having a program, so you don't always have to go out and buy the newest version of of the program. So right now I'm working in different versions of QuickBooks, but I'm working in 2014. I haven't gone out and updated every year. I mean, if I weren't doing payroll, I could work in the same version for quite a while. The thing to keep in mind is, like if I'm working in 2014, QuickBooks is going to stop supporting it in 2017. So they only support it for 3 years. But if you're trying to do payroll, then your payroll subscription will stop. It will, I mean, the payroll subscription will no longer be applicable beyond that 3rd year. So they're always putting you in the position where you have to update. But if you got your hands on an old version of QuickBooks from 2009, it's going to do the trick for you. I mean, it's going to be able to go in and help you get set up with and meet most of your needs. So because it can be really expensive if you update it every year as well as paying a payroll subscription every year. So another tool called FreshBooks is cloud accounting, and you can do it from your computer. And this is the one that's just really good for accounts receivable. So I'm a massage therapist, and I'm just gonna I want to be able to bill my clients and issue them statements, and I'm doing deposits, and they make deposits on their statements or make payments on previous invoices. This is going to be an awesome program for me. It makes me totally mobile. I can, send invoices from anywhere, and you pay a monthly subscription fee for this. Quicken's one you just go out and buy. FreshBooks is one that you subscribe to. You Need a Budget is another great tool that they have some really interesting statistics when you look at UNAB. You pay a monthly subscription fee, I think it's like $5. Students are even less. But they say that people have started saving more money, which I think is a really interesting benefit to promote. Like over the course of a year or something, it shows the change in one's savings from so much a month to an overall of, it's a much bigger number, which is, I think, could really speak to a lot of us in terms of how we're spending our money. It's really intended more for personal, but it's a great way, it could just as well be used for a small business. An example of a mobile tool, this is one my daughter uses, and it's a free program that she loads on her iPhone, and she downloads all of her transactions from her bank, and she's, once it knows, like King Soopers is a grocer, it automatically categorizes those transactions coming in, so you can go in a really, quick manner, and on your phone, and if you're doing cash purchases and cash expenditures, you can be recording it right into the Mint program. But I mean, how awesome is that, where you're just carrying around your all your financial information in your phone, and it's pretty accessible. Now, she doesn't have a lot of transactions that are business related, but still, I think it's a great discipline. I was really proud that she did it, because she is trying to do some business activities, and I think it's a great tool for her to be thinking about. So realistically, how much time can you put into this process? I mean, and do you have a big enough shoebox is the other question. And again, we want the shoebox to be the container or some kind of filing system that once you take that piece of paper and record that information, it goes away. It goes out of sight. I mean, it's too easy to just start throwing stuff in that inbox and never processing it, or never feeling like you have the time to process it. So you have to develop that practice of doing a little bit, picking that day a week. If it's 2 hours, if it's 4 hours, just, dedicating yourself to getting in there and doing it. At some point, you could have somebody else doing it, but you have to know what categories you want, what your expense categories are. You need to be able to go in then and look at the data after your bookkeepers entered the data, and you have to be able to go in and read the reports and understand what's going on. No matter what tool that you're using to really leverage your time, you have to have a grasp of that accounting process. So you know what it means when you see things showing up in a certain category and you're thinking, well, wait a minute, I can't imagine that I would have spent that much on inventory. It's possible that the inventory should be capitalized and moved to the balance sheet and not necessarily expensed out right away. So, you know, you really are the best person to monitor the financial health of your business. And so you've got to find whatever tools work for you and gain a really good understanding of them, and so you can make really timely assessments. So you know what's going on, what's my cash flow, am I going to be able to make that business loan payment? And while you're doing that, you're also trying to be aware of other specific reporting requirements that I have. You know, what kind of tools can I use to help me capture all these transactions, and at the end of the day, you know, I would really encourage you to move towards creating a balance sheet for your business, because it's going to be that snapshot at a point in time when you can really see how healthy is this business. And we want to take the time to do that. You know, do I have and a lot of my businesses started out where you have negative equity because you're generating sales, you're spending money, but you're buying assets and you're taking on some debt. And when you're in a position where your debt is, your liabilities are exceeding your assets, then you're going to have negative equity. And you see it a lot. But as you get more successful and more profitable, and every year you're adding a little bit of net income into that equity piece, into the retained earnings piece, then you're going to start seeing some positives show up. It might take 10 years. But if you know how it's going while you're in there in the trenches doing it, then you're going to have some confidence that, yeah, in 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, I think I am going to be really positive. I'm going to build up my client base to a point where I can really be profitable, and I'll have a really awesome looking balance sheet. It's a good tool, and it's one that we're going to talk about in some future classes. So so the challenges that that you have, I mean, you're trying to keep track of so many transactions, and it is going to take some time, and you need to decide, is that my role? Am I the bookkeeper? Can I pass that on to somebody else, get somebody else involved in actually recording those transactions for me, so that I can go in and be more of the accountant and look at the transactions and do more of the analysis. So you're spending cash, you're doing personal credit card transactions to make business purchases. You probably have recurring EFT payments, you have deposits and payments from customers. And another thing that we sometimes do as a small business is we're making donations of goods and time, and we need to be able to keep track of that too. So you got a lot going on, but I think if you have one place to put it all, then you're going to be better off in the long run by investing a little bit of your time now into understanding what you want the process to be. And in most cases, we're going to have to jump in and do it ourselves. But then as we grow and mature as a business, we're going to be able to hand some of that off, knowing what the process is supposed to be and how to interpret what you see in some of your reports. So, real-time financial management. And I always encourage folks, I mean, don't do as much of it as you can, but then at some point turn it over to an accountant to do. I work with a local group that does the tax returns. I don't want to do that part of it. I really want it to be, I don't want to be up to speed on all the code changes. I want a professional to step in. I give them a working trial balance on my the businesses so that they see the detail. I give them a copy of my QuickBooks, an accountant's copy, so they could dive in and look at detail if they need to look at the general ledger. they prepare the tax return, and then they turn around and give me any adjusting journal entries that I might need at the end of the year, and usually that includes like depreciation or adjustments, because sometimes I've done things that will affect my previous year's balance sheet. You know, when stuff goes in and gets dated into a previous period, and they can point those things out and say, you know, you need to make these corrections, because you always want to be able to tie your tax return to your financial statements, and you want to be able to pull those financial statements out of your accounting system, you know, whatever you use for a system. So I can go back and pull 2014, and I know it's going to match to what I gave the accountant in 2014. And you know, just last week I went back to the group I work with, and I just said, can you give me everything that I gave you in 2015, because I know there's opportunities for me to go in and make changes that I want them to catch now rather than when I submit it for the tax return. So I'd be happy to entertain any questions. I don't necessarily want to venture into the more technical side of tax accounting, but I would be, you know, if you want to really think about what tools or how to use these tools, I'd be happy to respond. And my contact information is right here, and like Waldo said, you know, our goal with this program is to really get some folks in and work with them on a counseling basis, so we can share some valuable information with you, and then you can try to put it into practical use in your business. And if you have questions, then reach out to the Women's Business Center and ask those questions, and set a meeting, and we can, you know, look at what you're doing and make suggestions and try to help you on that road to success.
If you have questions, please type them in the question box. In the meantime, Kim, I've got a couple. Is there a typical size when a business should look at graduating from the green bar or Excel spreadsheet to a specific software program?
Well, I think, you know, it depends on how comfortable you are with that technology transition. So I think the green bar is a really valid tool, but if you can get it all on one page for the month, I think that's when that's the point that you might want to transition to something else. If you have so many transactions, you know, where you're doing a couple hundred transactions. I mean, I don't know how many rows are on the green bar, but I think it gets really complicated when you're trying to carry totals of multiple columns from multiple pages. I think at that point a spreadsheet is more efficient for you. But, you know, some folks just aren't comfortable with the technology and using Excel. So
right.
I think they have to make that personal choice if they're willing to spend the extra time. Because what happens in a green bar is you spend a lot of time adding up numbers and proofing your numbers. So I think if you're comfortable with that, then by all means stick to it.
Okay. You made a comment in one of your earlier slides about proper debt structure. And I know this is getting a little technical for the topic today, but what do you mean by proper debt structure?
Well, I think when you're a business, and this goes back to that, it goes back to your net equity issue. So if you have, number one, if you have a lot of debt, and let's say that you've taken out a home equity loan, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying, you know, there's this, it's almost like you kind of, as you grow as a business, you kind of move into these new tools that you can use for financing your business. So, you know, so we've done, you know, owner contributions, we've done home equity loans, we've done an SBA loan, we've gone through the whole gamut. And a lot of times what you're doing is you're taking a long-term finance tool like a home equity loan, and you're using it on a short-term type purchase like inventory. And you know, there's a tremendous cost to that when you finance a short-term asset over a really long term, 5 to 10 years. So you have to be thoughtful about matching the debt tool to the type of purchase that you're making. You don't want to go in and do long-term debt structure on operating income. I wouldn't necessarily encourage that, but a lot of people go in and do, credit card debt, and it's a little shorter term, especially if you can get it paid off right away. So when you look at someone's balance sheet, you're going to be able to see, oh, look, there's a business loan here, I've got a home equity loan at the credit union, I've got this loan. You just want to really point back to what assets were purchased with that debt, and that those match up really well.
Okay. Yes.
Does that make sense? And then maybe you can speak to that a little better. I mean, you have the banking background to share with how you would look at that. And I do see we have a question from, oh, here's one from Travis. Okay. Do you see the question from Travis?
I see a question, yes.
Okay.
When we have questions and go to WWDC to find help, what is the best way to bring you up to speed to make the counseling productive? I found that we become so specific to the ways we account for things that sometimes the difficult thing is explaining why we're using certain GL accounts, etc.
I think that's a really good question. I think you want to be working with, I think most accountants would be able to look at it and look at your GL accounts, and if they know what your business model is, if they really have a good understanding of, what your revenue sources are, how you're recording it, what your expenses are, if you can really communicate that effectively to them, because I want my books, I want my GL accounts to really be able to reflect what's going on in that business setting. So it should be, I mean, to a trained accountant, they should be able to look at it, and if there are any nuances, then you explain that to them. But I think if you start out by explaining, your business, sending them to your website so they can see, or giving them information about how what your business model is, that's a really good starting point.
And as a business counselor, Travis, I would like to say that hopefully we can keep track either by records that we keep, recording our discussions, or just remembering what we've talked about with you, so that if you come in once and explain things to us and then come in a second time, we know where you're at, what you're talking about, and we can pick up where we left off. So that's a good point.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to allow for that transition if you really want to be able to take advantage of some of the services from the Women's Business Center. You don't have to be female to come to the Women's Business Center, but you do have to allow some, learning on our part to understand what it is that you're doing and how you're trying to account for it.
I want to reiterate 2 points that Kim made as well. It's important to keep your books current. Make sure you're updating things on a regular basis and not waiting 3 months or so, because the trends and then compare this month to last month, this year to last year, this quarter to last quarter, because the trends can help you make critical decisions as you're managing your business.
Other questions? Or, if you do have some suggestions for, future trainings or something that you'd like to see developed in more detail with regards to these webinars, we would really entertain any input like that too, because we want to know what you're thinking with regards to what you need to know, what questions you have, and how we could help. So we're happy to customize the future trainings so that it makes more sense for your business. And the one-on-one counseling can do a lot for that too. So.
And with that, I put up a schedule of the upcoming webinars in this series. so that you can know when the specific topics will be discussed. On Monday, November 21st, our topic will be telling your financial story using financial statements to manage your business. On Monday, December 19th, we will be discussing the balance sheet. What is it and why do I care about one? On Monday, January 9th, we will be discussing preparing for tax time. Monday, February 6th, we will be talking about how do you record credit card transactions in QuickBooks, how do you record loan payments accurately for your balance sheet purposes, and how do you do account balances and reconciling. And then on Wednesday, March 1st, we will finishing up with a program summary and graduation from this particular series. So we will be sending out updates on those in the future as time gets closer. Please be watching your emails, your inboxes for when the registration on those may be available. And I don't see any other questions, so I think we will end the program today. If you do have a question, you can contact us here at the office or email Kim at her email address, and we can sure do our best to answer those for you. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope that you have a good day. So look for if you want a repeat of this and to get any further information, this will be posted to our YouTube channel. Again, go to YouTube and type in Wyoming Women's Business Center. Thank you all for joining us today.